The kids are going to have to, learn how to interact and develop relationships with those coaches and quite frankly, be coached, by a different, group of coaches.
Sure, but it's a trade-off, Garrett, because then when you introduce professional coaches, you introduce tremendous costs.
You do.
Right?
Welcome to Sponsor Bowl, a podcast that brings together sports organizers and brand leaders to talk about the business of grassroots sports. I'm Garrett Shea, and I've spent the past 20 years in youth sports industry where I've built nationally televised sporting events and corporate sponsorship programs. I created this podcast to bring in experts from the sports industry and have them share what they do in the space and how they do it. My guest today is going to talk about content, digital media, and sports technology. Let's welcome CEO of iSport360, Ian Goldberg. All right, Ian, it's great to have you on.
Great to be here. Great to be here, Garrett.
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk. Tell us, what is iSport360?
iSport360 is a content platform for the youth sports industry. We put out a newsletter on a weekly basis. It goes out to 3.5 million people. Those are coaches, parents, sports organizers. And our goal is really just to make youth sports better for all of those people and their kids.
Now, so as the founder and CEO, tell us how'd you start this company and why'd you start it?
Yep, great question. Well, you and I both have something in common, and that's we're New Jersey sports dads. We both live in New Jersey. I've coached my daughters in every sport they've ever played. I've been a very involved sports dad. But one of the things that I noticed at the ball fields over the years was just the youth sports culture. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of miscommunication in youth sports. And so I wanted to create a platform that helped coaches, parents, and kids work together to make it a great experience. But also to give sports parents some guidance and some suggestions for their journey, because I think sports parents are really misunderstood sometimes, and they need a lot of support.
Sure. And so as you think about your kind of media channels, let's talk about one media channel, in particular your newsletter, and maybe explain who the audience is and kind of what the content is that you're delivering.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this started as a hobby about 7 years ago. And every weekend I would leave the ball fields kind of shocked at some of the crap that I witnessed from the sidelines of these games. And so I started blogging. I just started writing every weekend. This turned into a weekly newsletter, which I really just wanted to give sports parents some new ideas, some suggestions on how they could do a better job, help coaches a little bit from my experience. And this turned into a weekly newsletter. The newsletter, I started to get important, knowledgeable people to contribute to this newsletter, like professional athletes, nutritionists, educators. And it started to get some momentum, which I was really excited about. And then just in the last year and a half, the subscription base has kind of blown up. And now we have 3.5 million readers per month. And we put out articles, videos. We try to keep it very positive and helpful and fun.
Yeah, I know. And as we created this podcast, Sponsor Bowl, it's all about the business of grassroots sports. And clearly you've set out and you saw a problem, and I think we all see it, and that is the behavior and the experience of youth sports. And there's some great experiences. Like my children had tremendous youth sports experiences, but I've also looked at it and said, man, that there's some challenges, and I think a lot of it stems from we'll call it volunteer dads or volunteer coaches, let's say, that maybe aren't qualified and or are maybe misaligned. I would always kind of target it. It's more like, hey, we're not trying to create the next crop of 5-star college recruits. We're trying to, create community, have fun, make sport enjoyable for our children. And you know what? When they turn 14, 15 years old, yeah, maybe at that point you start to talk recruiting. But at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, I mean, it is incredible the pressure that some of these volunteer parents slash coaches put on the children. And I find that a lot of it has to do with people that maybe have never played collegiate sports or have never played a higher level sport. Maybe they have an idea what they think, the youth sports experience should be, but in fact, that's the opposite of what it should be. So getting that alignment on the values as a coach, for your kids, I think is so important. And that's what strikes me as somebody who does read your content. The fact that all of the content that you're delivering it truly is like, how do we make youth sports better, globally? And that you identify the problem, you solve it. You're helping to solve the problem, because I don't know if we're gonna ever solve the problem. We're gonna continually work towards making making it better. But and then you've created a business that you're driving revenues and you're monetizing around it, which is very interesting. Let's talk about the business side. 3.5 million subscribers. I mean, that's tremendous, right? I mean, that just shows you the power of youth sports right there. But how, like, is it a free subscription? Like, how are you monetizing the business?
Yep. So this newsletter is free. It will always be free. But we have found two interesting ways to monetize. I guess, which is part of the reason that you invited us on a podcast called Sponsorable, because we didn't set out to make a newsletter that was sponsorable, but it actually turns out when you have 3.5 million people reading something, it becomes sponsorable. So certainly we've started to make money from advertising revenue. And with 3.5 million people in our audience, we're able to get world-class brands to advertise on this platform. So some of our perfect fit partners right now are Allegra Allergy, who's advertising in our newsletter, which was perfect because half the kids on my daughter's soccer team used Allegra to get through the spring season. We have IHG Hotels, which is advertising with us right now. And they're also a great fit because when families are traveling to youth sports tournaments or just on family vacation, IHG has a lot of affordable properties to choose from, including Holiday Inn and Holiday Inn Express. And then we just started with a workout wear company called Splits 59, which is perfect, stylish, comfortable, durable wear for sports moms and for their daughters. So, yes, we're making money from advertising revenue. But then the really interesting and exciting thing that's happened in the last 18 months is that other companies in the youth sports space and organizations have asked if they can take our newsletter and put their own masthead and logo across the top and then distribute it to their own audiences. And that's how we've grown this audience so quickly. So essentially we are licensing or syndicating our content, and we're being paid to do that, which is tremendous.
That is, and it just shows like you have a solution for a problem that is, that's large scale. You can figure out, all of the different ways to monetize it, right? Like, I mean, you named 3 great partners, and I call them partners because, like, at the end of the day, in the world of youth sports, I mean, Allegra and Holiday Inn, right, Express, etc. I mean, they can go and advertise anywhere, right? They can spend dollars and advertise local television, or they can, I mean, they can reach that audience, but they are clearly like they see the value in your content. They see they see the importance of what you're doing, and they're putting their money behind it. And that's, that's what I always strive to look for in great partners. Sponsors are not just those that step up financially, but those that that see that, hey, you have a great solution, and you are helping to make the youth sports world, certainly better. So certainly, applaud those partners, and there's great strategic fits, right? I mean, I couldn't think of a better fit than Allegra, and Holiday Inn, and the third one is
Splits 59 is the workout wear company, which is like a competitor of Lululemon and Alo and Built and Vuori, which is a very hot category right now. But I think what you've seen the reports in the last few weeks. I think there's a dynamic going on right now that is really beneficial for my business and for your business. And that is, number one, brands are investing in the youth sports space. They are, there's been announcements from like Banana Boat, who partnered with Little League, and Jersey Mike's that partnered with, I think, NFL Flag. Like, these big brands are making a huge investment, not so much because they expect a return on that investment immediately, but they want their brand to be associated with kids and sports and, a wholesome community like this. And then the second dynamic that's going on is, brands love storytelling. And rather than just running banners all across the internet, with a platform like ours and some of the others in this space, they're able to tell their story. Like, why is Allegra such a great fit with the youth sports space? Because everyone in the spring is sneezing and wheezing and coughing their way through the soccer games. So yeah, it is just a perfect fit and a perfect story to tell.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so, let's talk about, like, what does Allegra get? So, I'm a brand like Allegra. I'm looking to, clearly your audience is, really strong audience, that I want to be able to reach, because they're families, active kids, they're outdoors, right? There's a lot of reasons why it makes great sense. Um, eh, but, like, ultimately, it's still, what are those marketing vehicles to reach those folks? So let's talk about, your what type of inventory, what type of assets are you able to offer, a group like Allegra?
Great question. So we have a few. I mean, of course, we have banner ads in our newsletters. Not an offensive amount, but there are some banners in there. I think our strength is in native content. So pretty much every brand that sponsors our newsletter or advertises in our newsletter asks us to write native articles for them. They approve them, of course. They have the ability to edit them, but they feel like we speak to our audience and we know how to connect with the youth sports community. So native content is super important. We also have a featured product section, where we'll feature some like discounts or coupons or things like that. And then lately, we've been starting to look at other types of content that's sponsorable besides just our newsletter. So I'll give you two examples. One, which is pretty exciting, is we've started a video series called Halftime Heroes, where we interview celebrity athletes. So think of like Brandy Chastain or Johnny Damon, and we interview them and we talk about their experience as sports parents. Everybody knows their experience as athletes and knows their story, but not many people have heard their story about being sports parents. And it's pretty entertaining to hear Brandy Chastain talk about her being that crazy mom on the sideline of her son's soccer games, or Johnny Damon talking about balancing the fact that he has 8 kids and he has to get to all their ball games. So that's Halftime Heroes. That's a sponsorable asset for us. It's long form video. And then the other thing we started doing is we've started to create downloadable ebooks, particularly for coaches. Since, as you mentioned, there are lots of coaches that need some help, both with the X's and O's and with the general, like, teaching kids life skills. So we do these 12 to 15 page downloadable ebooks, and they might be on topics like how to work with the parents on your team, how to run tryouts, how to give feedback and fairly evaluate the players on your team. So these kinds of deep dives on specific topics. So those are sponsorable ebooks as well.
No, that's great. It's always, and as I look at this business, it's always important to be able to offer brands, multiple touch points. So it's not just like, hey, we just have a banner ad, but we have all of these other ways that you can impact and engage with the audience in a relationship building, meaningful way. Native content is interesting. Maybe for those that might not be as familiar with native content, maybe just define it for our listeners, and then I'll ask a couple other questions from there.
Sure. So native content for us means we have 6 articles in every newsletter that goes out. And native content would be an article that is actually sponsored by a brand and tells that brand's story, but it looks like an article and it reads like an article. Those brands ask us to create this native content for them. And they feel very comfortable with trusting us because everyone at iSport360 is a sports parent, is a coach, and in some cases are even sports administrators in their own local clubs. So I feel like we have a lot of value to add in terms of helping a brand speak to the youth sports community.
Sure. And I'm a huge I've used Allegra probably for 20 years. So I'm a back when they used to have to prescribe it to you.
Right.
And so I'm a huge Allegra, fan, customer. It certainly helped it's improved my life, but there's always that, it's a little bit tricky when you're starting to talk about content and native content and sponsored content because, right, it walks that line. How do you disclose to your readers that, hey, this is paid content versus editorial?
Good question. And Garrett, you and I probably remember 15 years ago or maybe even 10 years ago when it was a total no-no to mix advertising and editorial. But that line has really become blurred. I mean, for us, we put a statement right at the top of the page that says this content is sponsored by Intercontinental Hotels or by Allegra. And then we go on and we write the article. But for our newsletter, for all intents and purposes, we are the editorial staff, but we are also endorsing product. And the reason we feel comfortable doing that is because we're very selective with these products. For example, we sent out an email to our audience on behalf of Allegra where I told the story that my daughter is an Allegra user. I am the coach of the soccer team. Half the team uses Allegra and the other half of the team should be using Allegra because they have to come to the games with a box of tissues. So I think definitely the line has blurred, but we do make it clear to our audience when we're endorsing a product and who sponsors that content.
Yeah, because and that's always the balance, right? When you're dealing with the paid sponsorship, it's a balance because you need the users, right? And I always would say the most important piece of any business is that customer relationship. So you need to have the user see your content as being valuable in order to make the sponsorships worthy enough, valuable enough for an Allegra to pay for it. So there's always that, it's definitely a balancing act. And I've read your content and you guys do a great job. I think delivering, to your point, you've picked the right products that are great for youth sports. So, and that's, to me, that's 90% of the battle is you've got the right products. Now you're just educating the community about them. But
thank you.
Yeah.
And to your point, Garrett, we waited 5 years before we started putting advertising in our newsletter because we wanted to build trust with our audience. Now, by the way, my Silicon Valley investors weren't too thrilled about that we waited so long. But I think it was really important for us to have our audience trust us. And now that we're starting to put advertisers in there, it has to be advertisers that bring value to this audience. Otherwise, they're not going to be there.
And you talk about your investors, and I think probably a lot of we've talked in the past about private equity and how private equity is coming into into the world of youth sports in a big way. How did you? You this started off as a passion project. You built it to a point, and then you said, "Hey, I think I need some investment in order to take it to the next level." Maybe talk us through your journey. Probably early days to where did you decide to grow and go and seek investment? How did you go and seek investment?
Yeah, the best way I can sum it up in kind of one line is like, think of a New Jersey guy who wanted to dive deeply into the Silicon Valley culture. And so I started this business, like I said, based on my own experience as a sports dad and a coach. But I started this business by going through an accelerator program in Silicon Valley, which was a 3 or 4 month program where you have mentorship and you have some investment from tech people out there. So we started this company as a software business, and we were going to build an app that was going to help coaches, parents, and kids collaborate, work together, communicate, share feedback, share training videos. And we built an app, actually. Um, and I did get some great investors behind this thing. But what became really clear just in the last 18 months is that our newsletter has a much wider opportunity and a much more short-term opportunity than the software. The software has a lot of competition out there with competitors with a lot of money. But the newsletter is filling a void, solving a problem. Content is hot right now, and not many companies have the resources to create it. So, like, we're going full force into the content and newsletter space, and kind of putting the software on the back burner.
Sure. And you think about the newsletter or the content side of it, and I, as the founder, as the catalyst behind growing the company, recognize, hey, you need to keep growing the subscribers. What like how are you approaching growth when it comes to attracting and gaining more subscribers?
Yeah, so certainly when we started out, Garrett, this was so homegrown that the way we added subscribers was I would hire high school kids to go out to like the local baseball and soccer tournaments and take down people's email addresses, coaches and parents, which, by the way, is the best way to have them opt in, because in person, giving you their email address is 100% safe. As we grew this thing more and more, we looked for ways that we could really scale this, into the millions. And so, as I mentioned, we have some of these partners that we're working with that are distributing our newsletter under their own masthead. So we consider this a white label partnership. They pay us to license our newsletter, but we have a really strong pipeline right now that I think will take us from 3.5 million newsletter subscribers to probably 7 million in the next year and a half. And it's through partnerships with national governing bodies, which are looking to connect with the end users across the country. So think of like the US Youth Stalkers of the world and the USA Field Hockeys and USA Footballs. I don't want to get into too many specifics about exactly who we're talking to, but that's kind of the nature
Sure.
of the partners. But even think about some of the huge flag football leagues, baseball leagues across the country. Think of some of the huge facilities across the country that host tens of thousands of kids there each year at tournaments. They want to keep a connection to their end users. So we're talking to them about creating a white labeled version of our newsletter. So it's a pretty exciting time, and content is super hot right now. And the great thing in the last few months is that we've been recognized by the Aspen Institute for our content, by Youth Sports Business Report, by the U.S. Olympic Committee, and others. So I feel like we have some really good momentum here to grow this thing very quickly in the short term.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, that's certainly some great achievements there. And maybe share a little bit more about the Aspen Institute.
For sure. Well, you know that Aspen Institute Project Play is essentially the authority in this space. I just got back from, well, Project Play, I guess now is about 3 months ago, but I was invited to speak there on the topic of sports parenting. They had presented some research and findings from sports parents, none of which was a major shock, but they asked me to, speak about that research report. But it goes back to a lot of the things you were saying earlier on that are wrong with youth sports. Sports parents are spending too much money invested in their kids' sports. They're spending too much time invested in their kids' sports. They're way too involved. They have their kids focusing on one sport at a very early age. Because parents spend so much money, they're never happy with the coaches, which is why there's so much pressure on the coaches, like you said, a few minutes earlier. So yeah, I'm very excited to be involved and recognized by Aspen Institute Project Play.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one of the reasons I actually prefer the more, and I will call them professional coaches or coaches that are getting paid that are non-parent coaches, is because right at the end of the day, you you don't have like you kind of turn over your athlete or your child to those professional coaches, and they do like every professional coach we've had for my kids has been tremendous. It's actually been the volunteer coaches. And and listen, I've been a volunteer coach myself, so it's tricky because you're trying to manage your kid plus X number of other people's kids, and there are certainly I'm a football guy, but I've coached soccer, I've coached basketball, and that's more of out of a need or a necessity. The community needs volunteers, and that's where I do look and say, man, it's tricky because the volunteer coaches are typically where I've seen the biggest challenges, in youth sport, thus far, at least in my own, with my own kids. It's been the professional coaches that have been great because I just, kind of wash my hands and, hey, the kids are going to have to, learn how to interact and develop relationships with those coaches and quite frankly, be coached, by a different, group of coaches.
So sure, but it's a trade-off, Garrett, because then when you introduce professional coaches, you introduce tremendous costs.
You do.
Right?
Yep.
And so this week, I was actually blown away. This week, I saw a chart of all the different soccer leagues across the country and what the average cost is to play 1 year of soccer in those leagues. And on the low end, it was like $3,000 per year. On the high end, for these very elite, travel teams that go, travel across the country, it was like 9,000. This is for soccer. Now, my kids play travel soccer here in New Jersey. It doesn't even cost them $3,000. But my point is, like, the cost goes up when you start to add the professional coaches, and as costs go up, so do parents' expectations, which is why you probably notice in your own community, a lot of parents, even with the paid coaches, they move their kid around because they're not happy with the result or playing time or skill development or the communication or organization, you name the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point in travels. And listen, I think soccer has done the best job out of every sport that I interact with, and I interact with all of them, in building, managing, growing the sport, and they're constantly innovating. And that's, I work with Ohio Soccer Association, and they shared with me some of their new plans for the upcoming season, where they're creating a travel soccer league in Ohio, and it's actually it's very innovative, at least in my mind. is they're putting, all of these clubs put together their teams. And then let's say, I live in Cleveland. Well, I'll have 2 weekends, Sundays, I think it is, 2 Sundays in Cleveland where the teams from Cincinnati and Columbus travel up to Cleveland, and I have a chance to play in 2 or 3 games that weekend. And then 2 weekends in Columbus and 2 weekends in Cincinnati. So I'm having a chance to play teams from across the state. And at the end of the day, I'm traveling down right to locations 4 times, as opposed to like, man, in my kids, like we're driving to a different, we're driving an hour, every weekend for a different game. So I thought it was a more efficient model for travel soccer. And that's where, I look at soccer and say, man, like they're trying different things and they're constantly innovating. And that's where, that's why soccer is going to just continue to grow, in my opinion, across America, because they innovate, and they maybe haven't figured everything out, but they continue to work to improve it, which I don't see in all of the sports. Some of the sports I think are kind of stuck in the 90s. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, soccer is definitely innovative, but as many people say, it's also like the most commercialized of the sports in the United States, the most bureaucratic. It's a big, big entity, a big industry. Um, but it's interesting, Garrett, like many brands are trying to figure out how to reach the soccer audience, as an example, and trying to figure out, like, do I partner with US Youth Soccer? Do I partner with one of the state associations? Do I partner with one of the clubs that has a presence nationwide? And just one thing I want to point out here is that we reach all of them. And I think being able to offer them the reach that we do, a brand, the reach that we do is really important, because the alternative starts to get extremely fragmented.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, listen, I've sold for 20 years into the grassroots sports world, and I've had the chance to work with massive brands and small brands, and I've gotten told no probably more than anybody. Trying to pitch and sell grassroots sports, it's a bite, scratch, claw mentality, and you really have to hustle. Um, but like as you talk about your audience, like why do brands tell you no? Like what's the more common reasons why brands are telling you no at this point?
We're kind of early on, so I haven't gotten a ton of no's. I mean, as a salesperson in my career, I've gotten plenty of no's, but in this space, we haven't gotten a ton of no's. Most of the no's that we hear are like timing and budget related. And that's the frustrating part for us. I mean, we just realized we were a media company in the last 18 months. So we're basically going through just like our first cycles with some of these advertisers. And you know the drill, Garrett. It's like in some cases you're dealing with the advertisers, in some cases you're dealing with their agencies, or you have to pitch the advertiser to get in the door, and then they have you work with their agency. But I've found it's very much about timing and budget.
Yeah, my experience is as I look at it, most people that tell me no about youth sports probably don't understand the youth sports audience. Or don't have kids that are in youth sports, because I think once you're into the ecosystem of youth sports, you see how impactful it can be, and you see the audience, right? You go to a soccer field over a weekend, and I mean, it's just hundreds of parents and family members out there watching and engaging, and you see all the products they're using. Like we just did a partnership with GCI Outdoor, which are the great chairs, right? The kind of chairs, and they're with Connecticut Junior Soccer Association. So they're the official, youth soccer or official chair of Connecticut Junior Soccer Association. And before that though, like I was, I actually went into my garage and was like, wait, I own two GCI chairs. But I didn't know that I did because like they had never branded it. But now every soccer field I go on, I'm like, man, half these chairs are GCI chairs. And they are now, I think, looking to say, hey, this is a great experience. Like this is a great opportunity for us to go out and really push the accelerator and get, make people aware, hey, GCI outdoor chairs are the best, and they really are. So they've got a great product, and now they just, and now they know who the audience is. Now, to your point, they got to reach that audience. But most of the no's I get are, in my opinion, one, I always say in youth sports, we are not market makers, right? Like the NFL is a market maker. At the end of the day, you don't have to have a strategy in place to go and spend your money with the NFL. You've got to probably have some sort of strategy in place to say, yeah, I'm going to spend whatever, 25, 50, $100,000 in youth sports. I don't want it to be a one-off. I want to have some sort of strategy that is really driving and engaging this youth sports audience. So I typically am told no because it's not a strategy fit. And then second, in my opinion, it's, the folks that I'm working with maybe don't really truly understand who the audience is in youth sports. It's amazing to me how many times I pitch business and somebody tells me, well, we don't market to kids. I'm like, well, we actually aren't really marketing. Like, 8-year-old Johnny is not getting the emails, right, about youth basketball. It is actually the parents that you're engaging with. So, right, and part of it is it's an education. How am I educating these brands and agencies about who are we really targeting, and how are we engaging with them, and how does your brand fit in? And but the challenge is they're and they get pitched by 1,000 different people. So we get that, but they're maybe not always really thinking it through or seeing, connecting the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking to someone at M&M Mars, actually a brand manager essentially for M&Ms, who was saying we are not allowed to target kids. And so very important for me to point out about our newsletter, it doesn't go to kids. It goes to sports parents. But I think something that's kind of magical about this youth sports market is when you're reaching the youth sports parents, you're reaching the buyer for the kids. So like Blitz 59 workout wear, these sports moms are the ones who are actually buying this workout wear so they could look great on the sidelines of their kids' games. But they're also probably buying it for their 12-year-old daughter. So you reach two generations. I think that's a really, really valuable, valued proposition for reaching the youth sports market. And to your point about market makers, you're right. The NFL is a market maker, but we have like million micro market makers. And those are the moms on the sidelines of the game. Because when one mom is carrying a Stanley, water container at the game, within 2 weeks, every other mom has the same pink Stanley water container, right? So you have all these micro market makers because, as you know, Garrett, within a team, the parents talk. They buy the same cleats for their kids. They buy the same, whatever gear, mouth guards, and the moms get the same clothing brands and the same water bottles. So that's why it's fragmented and it is hard for brands to see opportunity. I'll just add one other point there, which you made about youth sports just might not be a strategy for brands. So we work with Intercontinental Hotel Group. We used to work with Marriott. They advertised in our newsletter for a short period of time. They never had a youth sports budget. So we were constantly trying to find little pockets of budgets that they were pulling from all over the place. Intercontinental Hotel Group has a youth sports budget. and they see the opportunity here. And I'm thrilled about that, because it means that they're going to be a great partner for us. But, some companies just haven't dedicated a budget or haven't realized that there's a strategy there yet.
Sure. No, that's a great example. Um, and so, Ian, for those that are listening, one, why don't you share how listeners can get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about iSport360, whether they want to be potentially a sponsor or they want to be like a white label, content partner.
Absolutely. So first of all, the website is iSport360.com. LinkedIn is a great way to connect with us. For brands that want to tell their story to the youth sports community, we will help you. If you are looking for new ways to connect with this audience beyond just kind of standard ads or maybe sponsorships at field, we can help you. For youth sports organizations, national and state governing bodies, very large facilities across the country. If you would like to white label our newsletter, absolutely, please get in touch with us. We will create a custom version of this newsletter for you that includes all of the fun, informative, helpful, uplifting, and refreshing content that we put into our own newsletter.
Great. Well, hey, make sure you like and subscribe, Sponsorable, so we can continue to get great guests like Ian Goldberg on the show. So, Ian, let's transition to a few other topics here. What'd you do before iSport360?
I've spent most of my career in the digital marketing world, starting in the very early days of the internet when like pop-up ads were the most innovative new tool, the shiny new object. Before that, I, in fact, started my career at the White House in Washington, D.C., a little known fact, but I worked for two presidents. I worked for the economic advisors to President Bush, the first, and then President Clinton, because I went to college down there. So that was an amazing way to start a career. And then I've been doing this full time for the last 8 years.
Yeah. So we do have quite a few, whether they're students or interns that are that tune into our show. Maybe talk a little bit about, as you think about your career and how you got into sports, because let's face it, like sports marketing, it's a very, fun, exciting career to, especially for those looking from the outside in. But it is also really challenging, space to get into. Like yourself, you created your own. You had the ability to create your own company and get into it. And so maybe provide a little insight for some of our students, interns that are looking to get into sport. What's that? What's a good advice and or potential pathways?
For sure. Maybe you're asking this because you know that my daughter is a sophomore at Indiana studying sports marketing, and I have been a very involved dad in helping her sort of navigate her career. I love helping people in this space. Unfortunately, I think many sports marketing, management majors are pushed towards ticket sales as the only way to get into the sports industry, or they're pursuing a dream that's one in a million that they're going to be the next big sports agent. And in between those two things, there's loads of opportunity. There's sports technology companies. There's youth sports and recreation companies and organizations. There are tons of nonprofits in the in the sports space. But I would say the one recommendation that I have seen help the most young people is build your network. Go to events, connect with every single person you meet on LinkedIn so you have a permanent connection with them, and stay in touch with them. Like their posts, send them a message, just checking in from time to time. And then when you're ready to look for that next internship or your next full-time job, you have hundreds or hopefully thousands of people that you can call upon. Applying to 100 jobs is not nearly as important as building your network for the long term.
No, that's excellent advice. I mean, I think back to when I was coming out of college, and at the time, I played football at Ohio State and Rutgers, and so we never had time to do an internship. But so I came out of college and had zero experience, and still remember every single I probably put my resume in for 300 different companies, and back then, the internet was just becoming popular. But the 3 or 4 interviews I got, they'd, well, what's your experience? And it was, very challenging. I didn't have an answer. And so I look at it and say, man, the importance of getting an internship I mean, it's critical. I don't know of a world where you can get a full-time job after school without an internship. And to your point, like, getting an internship is now so competitive. So, you know, investing in building the relationships with these, key people, these key leaders, that, hey, it might not pay dividends this week or next week, but 6 months from now, 12 months from now, that's when it does pay dividends. And so that's great advice from you to talk about, investing and building that authentic relationship with folks. And I am shocked at how many current college students don't have LinkedIn. Like the fact that, because you probably a lot like you, I'll go into a business marketing class and have a chance to speak, but ask the question, hey, how many of you guys have LinkedIn? And literally, it's probably like 10 to 15% of the room will say, yeah, I have it. I know. But it is that networking. Because I think a lot of people see networking as a negative. It's like sales. A lot of young people see sales as, I can't do sales. Sales really is education, right? Networking is really building relationships, right? And building like authentic relationships where we can, to your point, I know that you have a daughter at Indiana who's a sophomore and has an interest in marketing, because we've built a relationship through time. Yeah, that building of relationships, I think, is definitely missed by a lot of younger folks. So.
And I think actually, Garrett, I can't believe I didn't know this about you. I did not know you played football in college. That's awesome. We're going to have to talk about that a little bit more. But I do think athletes in college are at a huge disadvantage from a career standpoint. On the other hand, of course, we know they now are making NIL money. So, they have a little help along the way. But you're right. I think, and I do know some college athletes who don't have internships, don't have time to search for internships. But they need to make time because the likelihood, I mean, depending on your sport, but the likelihood that you're going to play professional, make a career out of your sport is very, very, very low. And you need a backup plan, So along the way, athletes need to build their network as well.
Agreed. And that's, in today's NIL world, which really only is affecting a 1%, right, of college. Like, everybody hears NIL and they think, man, all these college athletes are making all this money. I had, when NIL had first come out, I wanted to help students from Rutgers University. So I took on a couple of clients. And then I took on some other athletes around the country. And I mean, literally, I probably was representing 10 of the top college gymnasts in the United States. And nobody, they were getting offers $100 for, a post, or we'll give her, free pizza if they post something. So it's, the collegiate athlete is not, the average collegiate athlete is not, making, tens of thousands of dollars, let alone hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're lucky to be making a couple $100 on
Right.
NIL.
I guess Livy Dunn wasn't one of your athletes.
No, she was not. But yeah, when you're a college athlete, you're right. You've got to find time to do that internship, and it is hard over the summers. I mean, the collegiate football, it's tough, but in order to look forward and investing in your future career, you got to find that time. So, but all right, well, we're getting ready here to wrap up. Ian, really appreciate you coming on Sponsorable. Great to have you. We had some great conversation today about content, advertising, how to grow subscriber bases, how to build digital media and digital sponsorship opportunities. Truly a great time having you on.
Thanks so much for having me, and certainly look forward to doing some big deals in the future.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ian.